much for joining me today to discuss your journey within social work and some of the challenges that you have faced, and just a little insight for anyone that's looking to go into social work and those who are already in social work that may need that extra little motivation from you.
Excellent. Yeah, really happy to be here. I love podcasts. I love reaching out to aspiring and social workers at the beginning of their journey and just sort of sharing knowledge, sharing my journey. Yeah.
Talking about beginning of the journey. So with your journey, Colleen, what made you choose social work? Going back a bit down memory lane. So what makes somebody choose that profession?
I think it's about having a strong desire to kind of want to help people. And that sounds really cliche, but I kind of feel like social work chose me, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's a nice way to put it, isn't it? But I understand from what you're saying is because it's all about, you have to have that caring side in you, because everything is to do, every service, whether it's adults, children, it is care and going beyond, isn't it?
Yeah. I can remember saying that I wanted to help people at my interview for university. And it's always stuck with me because although it sounds very sort of altruistic, simplistic, almost rescuing, I think ultimately helping involves a lot of things. It could be psychological, it could be physical, it could be financial. And the other way to kind of say is, empower, nurture, instill hope. Those are all things that help people.
And how was your journey from sort of like graduating in social work to kind of getting your first role? Was it all like, oh my God, it's the real thing now?
So it was scary. So just to go back a little bit, when I was a teenager, I was helping a lady who was disabled. So she had MS. And what I realised was I would go round, and it was like a little sort of pocket money job where I'd go and help her get shopping, do a bit of cleaning, sit down and have a chat and a cake with her. And I realised that it was more about the contact that sort of really spoke to her loneliness and isolation.
Yeah.
And I think that really kind of propelled me into kind of thinking, I actually like this. I'm a people person. So I went to college. My original aspiration was to become an actress. But, when I told my mum that...
we have you on the screen here, so, a bit of camera, a bit of light.
Well, there you go. This is why I like the podcast. See, I like a bit of the limelight. So when I'd said that to my mum, she was like, no, that's a joke, something else. So I had a friend who was doing a health and social care course. And so I was like, yeah, that sounds good. I'll have a bit of that. So I went and enrolled on the course, and my friend dropped out after 2 weeks. And I'd done 2 years.
Yeah.
And at the end of the course, everyone was like, oh, we're going to uni. And I come from a working class background, and no one in my family had ever been to uni. I had no idea what I was going to do. People were going into sort of nursing, physical therapies, all different things. And I started reading up on what were my options with this NVQ in health and social care. And social work popped up, and I thought, yeah, I can see myself doing that. Yeah. And then because I literally was 17 at the time, and back then they really wanted mature students in social work.
Okay.
So I was looking at universities, and they were only taking mature students over 21.
No way.
Yeah.
To do the full uni degree, what we would do now.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, it's probably a career that does attract mature students.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to do it. So I think I applied for like one university in London, and the other university that were taking younger students was the University of Plymouth.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Yeah, that's where I
I'm
ended
going to
up.
Plymouth.
Yeah, that's where I ended
Oh,
up.
wow. And how was it in uni in Plymouth?
It was really quite daunting. You know,
Mm,
I'm a London girl and I'd never really ventured too far out of London. You know,
yeah.
the odd day trip to the seaside
Yeah.
or whatever, but I'd never spent any substantial time
Mhm.
outside of London. So going down to Plymouth in 1999
Mm,
was really daunting because it wasn't very diverse.
yeah.
I wasn't around people that looked like me, and I felt like I stood out like a sore thumb, if I can be
Yeah.
completely honest.
Yeah. So we talk about, you mentioned diversity there. So has there been changes to where you are now throughout your kind of career of social work? And you're doing brilliantly now as head of service. So where you are now, do you still face those challenges? Do you sometimes still feel like a bit of a sore thumb, odd person now?
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny you bring this up because being in a leadership role has its challenges, and I think looking around certain rooms, whether they be virtual or
Mhm.
in person, I am still that minority. I
Yeah.
still stick out like a sore thumb. And it would be great to sort of say, oh, it's 2024, like, why
Mhm.
haven't things moved on?
Yeah.
But there are reasons for that. And I think
What do
there
you think
is.
some of the reasons are?
So I think that as a person from a minority background, I've had self-limiting beliefs about how far I can go.
Yeah.
Um, I've waited around for um, promotions, years, and had that loyalty to employers. And I think sometimes we're not we're not encouraged
Mhm.
to apply for positions. Sometimes it's ourselves holding us back because
Yeah.
of our self, our some of the messages we
Yeah.
tell ourselves, our self-limiting beliefs.
And it shouldn't be like that, should it? It shouldn't be just
No,
because of race or for color that, hang on a minute, I'm not suitable enough, or maybe I'm not experienced enough for this, because your experience and your skill set are different to what you look like or where you come from. And I think it's more where people need to be a bit more vocal and say, actually, because it comes down to, if you don't ask, you don't get, do you?
yeah, totally. You're 100% right. I just think structurally as well, people aren't getting the support and the encouragement to progress in their careers. And we see that in some of the statistics that are
Yeah.
out there. Within the NHS, there was the Snowy White Peaks that was produced in 2014 that really spoke about the lack of diversity at kind of board level and senior level.
Yeah.
And there has been some real pushes to try and,
Yeah.
ensure that people are being encouraged and initiatives going on. So I think there is an appetite for change.
Yeah.
It's just getting people on board. And I think also, big organizations, such as the police, education, healthcare, social care, we know that institutional racism and discrimination exists.
Yeah.
And
Fortunately.
that is also part of the problem. That's part of people, working in organizations where they feel like they're being seen, they're being heard, they're being given the opportunities that everyone else is being
Yeah.
given.
And there has been a lot of, we see a rise in like independent little support groups that have been set up, haven't they? I think I met you at an event as well, where it was very motivational and encouraging for social workers that actually don't hold back and, ask and seek that position.
Definitely. I feel like you said, you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
So I always try and encourage everyone I come across, no matter what part of their career or journey they're on, I always say, see what is available to you. And if you're not celebrated where you are, move on. If you're
Yeah.
not being encouraged, celebrated, nurtured, not being seen where you are, move on, try different things, explore different teams, and see what else is out there.
I work with a lot of social workers, and because obviously we have a lot of locum social workers, so the amount of times we'll have social workers who go out on an assignment and then they'll come back, actually, do you know what? I fancy a bit of a change now. I want to kind of go into this team. And I think it's such a wonderful opportunity for them, because then they're not binded in something that they have to, if they don't feel comfortable there, they're kind of stuck there. They can move around. It gives them that flexibility.
Yeah. And I guess that's probably one of my big regrets, is not feeling brave enough and courageous
No.
enough to move around and try new things. I was kind
You
of
still do that now? You
yeah,
can still do
no,
that.
you're
Yeah.
100% right. Although I will say that I think in the position I'm in now, I
Yeah.
have a lot of variety in my role.
Yes, yeah.
So, yeah.
We've noticed that, because there's a lot of like, when you get to a certain position and it's like, okay, where do I go now? But do you know what, Colleen, it's something that you probably would do, is where you're able to kind of nurture other people in that kind of position where you've been and you've not been able to speak up, but you're able to kind of encourage and motivate them and say, actually, do you know what? Try this and try that. So you can actually live your dream through them.
Mm. And the nice thing about working in an NHS trust is that there are a lot of specialist teams.
Yeah.
So, if you did want to change, you wouldn't necessarily have to leave, because it's a huge
You
organisation.
can move around, yeah.
So, I think at the moment there's probably around 152 social workers employed by my trust in really specialist but wide-ranging roles. So
Yeah.
that's also quite nice.
Yeah. And you've always specialised in adult social care, Colleen.
Yes, yeah. So my final social work placement was with people that use drugs and alcohol.
Okay.
And I was really interested in mental health. But also when I done that final placement, it was like a light bulb moment. I was like, yes, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
This is 100% what I want to do. So I worked in the charity sector, then I worked for the NHS, and then I worked for the local authority. And I was lucky enough to work for a local authority that just, developed me and sort of like raised me as a social worker, if you know what I mean. You put me through the AMP training, the best interest assessor training. I've done some leadership training. I've done my practice education training. So I kind of really went.
Continued,
Yeah.
Where would you see like social work? Where do you think, in what kind of direction is it heading now for people who are coming into social work now? Like, you get your newly qualified social workers, or your social workers that have been there for like 2 years plus?
Yeah. I think at the moment, what I'm seeing is a real move towards a bit more community.
Okay.
So we talk about prevention in social work, but we know that, there are health inequalities, and people often don't prioritise their physical health and their mental health and well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that, I think, as part of that prevention work, it's really about getting to know communities.
Yeah.
So I think links to communities, I think using a strength-based approach, thinking about, what are people good at? What can people do, rather than what they can't? So I see that we're really thinking about community work, preventative work, but also what I'm seeing is a real interest in developing social workers as leaders.
Yeah.
So we work very autonomously. We carry
And
case loads. Go on, sorry.
so for that, like, is it something that the team manager would be responsible, or their service managers, to kind of like say, okay, do you know what? We noticed something here. We want to develop them further to get them to that next stage, give them that little push.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've always got to be banging the drum. I would say for someone who's just qualified, find your identity as a social
Yeah.
worker. I mean, I know that a lot of people, as I said, are coming in as mature students that may have spent years doing support work or care work. So they've already got that kind of foundation of what care is.
Yeah.
But I think as a social worker, you've really got to kind of develop an identity
Yeah.
and be nurtured in supervision.
Yeah. Social work, I mean, we hear a lot from like children's services as well, where they feel that everything, when you go into it, you feel like, yes, it's going to be, you're out and about and you're doing more and you're meeting the families and stuff and placements. But in hindsight, it's become a lot about, it's like a desk base. Is it the same within adult social care?
I don't think so. I think there's room for a lot of creativity. Obviously, we have the legal frameworks to work within. So if you're in a local authority doing, adult work, you'll be guided by the Care Act.
Yeah.
I think there's so much scope for doing so much more and being so much more to people than just a social worker.
Yeah.
Doing an assessment, you're building rapport, you're developing trust, you're listening to what people's needs are. And sometimes people won't tell you.
Yeah.
You've got to read between the lines and sometimes be quite creative with what you offer, how you offer it. So I think it goes beyond filling in a form. I think the job is what you make it. If you want to be very structural and procedural, you can be, but actually doing an assessment might take more than one go. There's going to be other factors. And I think what we also need to remember is that people don't exist in isolation. They have networks, they have families, they have people around them that contribute to their well-being. Sometimes not so much, thinking about unhealthy relationships and toxic relationships and so on and so forth. But I think there's real scope to kind of think some of those things through and work with people in a very meaningful way outside of the box.
Yeah. With obviously social work, it's tough, isn't it? It's tough. It has its challenges. And when you get so involved within people, what do you do? What do you think people should do to kind of like, okay, do you know what? I need to take my mind off this now. What's your self-care moments?
So my self-care moments are I dip into meditation from time to time and I'm feeling really overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I find it really good to do first thing in the morning just to kind of calm me.
Yeah.
And, make
get your affirmations in. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready for the day. I do go to the gym. So I try to get to the gym at least 2 to 3 times a week. And I have a personal trainer who...
Oh, amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. But you're like, yes, I've left it all out the door now when I get into the gym.
Yeah. I play netball and I umpire netball. So that's...
How do you fit all this in with your busy schedule, your busy lives? Because social workers, bless them, most of the time, we don't even get time to do anything. So how do you fit all this in?
But I think the other thing is, and this is something that I tried to install very early in my career, is around boundaries.
Yeah.
So, you have your set hours of work, and obviously there will be occasions where you are working the extra hour or two because you've got to get something done. But if it's happening consistently, you're working way more than your contracted hours.
Yeah.
You need to start thinking and analysing what is going on here.
Yeah.
So, I try to stay very boundaried, work within my contracted hours, and just I think it's just that kind of switching off.
Yeah.
If I'm working from home, I might go for a walk or watch a bit of telly, once I've turned the computer off, it's just really
And
detaching
switch,
from that
yeah.
professional. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, when you look, because obviously you're the position you're at, you're probably not recruiting people yourself, but when you hear about people, what qualities do you look for? Like whether it's a social worker or a team manager or a service manager, if you can just let us know a little bit sort of that you would look in a social worker and a team manager and then obviously a service manager.
Yeah. So for a social worker, I would really want to see a level of compassion coming through. I always think it's not what someone does sometimes, it's how they make you feel.
Yeah.
So it's almost feeling like there's a warmth, an aura coming
Yeah.
from that person. Even if they don't answer the questions as good as they might,
Yeah.
it's feeling like there's a keenness and eagerness. I think it's always really endearing if you are able to share a little bit about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, bring the
Yeah.
human side. You know,
Yeah.
this is a social science
Yeah.
social work. Bring some of your humanity into
Yeah.
interview. You know, and tell us a bit about yourself. I often find what people aren't really good, and this is women probably, as you'll be aware of,
Mhm.
not really good at selling themselves.
Okay.
So tell me what you're good at, even if it's not work
Yeah.
related. I want to know.
I
I'm
think we become a bit
interested.
more humble, don't we?
Yeah,
Like we're a bit
yeah,
more modest towards all that.
yeah, yeah. So we don't sell ourselves. We don't negotiate often, either. So that would be probably my top tip for someone who is quite new in, maybe
Yeah.
first, second interview, really quite nervous. And I think sometimes own that, you know,
Yeah.
own that, because I think people often um, are really hard on themselves. I remember my first interview I went for, and I didn't get the job and I cried. But the person
Oh,
giving me feedback was so
yeah.
lovely.
Yeah.
They were really, really nice. But
Oh,
I remember crying, and I came across them a lot later in my career, and I
yeah.
sort of said, "You didn't give me the job, but you were absolutely lovely."
Yeah. You made me cry.
I think it was a disappointment more than anything. I was like, I failed. I didn't get the job.
But it's all part of the experience, isn't it? It's all part of
It
the
is.
learning experience.
And feedback's really important,
Yeah.
really, really important, because it's going to tell you what you need for the
Yeah.
next round.
100%. We do a lot of that with obviously with agency social workers. You have a lot where they'll go and then it's, you wait to hear back. But we always make sure we try and chase that feedback up only because we know it will help them in enabling them to better themselves and where they may have kind of like, could improve and stuff. So we always make sure we give that feedback back.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess for a team manager, what would really be looking for is, someone who presents as a bit of a leader.
Yeah.
We want someone who is able to have difficult conversations,
Yeah.
has experience of supervising, someone who might have been involved in service improvement, evaluation, but
Yeah.
someone who also has a little bit of strategic vision.
Yeah.
So, someone who has perhaps a specialist interest or something that they feel really passionate about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then a service manager, if you wanted a service manager,
So
how would they
again,
impress you?
yeah. So again, I think it's thinking about strategic direction. What policies are guiding you? What legislation might guide you? What do you see as the challenges
Yeah.
coming your way, and how might you mitigate
Yeah.
or overcome some of those? So it's really thinking about some of that longer term strategic thinking.
Yeah. In your sort of, I don't want you to get into trouble, but if you could make a change in your current field where you are now, what changes do you think that do you get frustrated at times? You'd be like, oh God, I wish this was different, or we could do, because obviously you're bound by a certain framework and you follow a certain structure, and sometimes things are out of your hands. So if you were kind of like put in charge for the day, what changes do you think are necessary to make improvements and also to benefit yourselves, like the social workers as well?
Ah, that's a really good question. I suppose one of the things that I was talking about this week was the hierarchy in the NHS is really quite pronounced.
Yeah.
There's a lot of layers and a lot of red tape. And if I was in charge for a day, I mean, I wouldn't want there to be complete anarchy.
Yeah, you'd be like, let me just strip away that red tape. I need to take off this red tape.
But I guess I'd want there to be quicker decisions that didn't involve such lengthy processes.
Yeah.
You know, as a leader, I think sometimes it can remove your autonomy. You know, I can't make a decision because I have to go to my director and make, you know, and they make the decision, then it comes down to me, and then it goes down to my deputy, and then it goes down to it just feels
it's a
really
lengthy process. Yeah. Just a lengthy process.
Definitely.
Oh, Colleen, thank you so much for sharing all your experiences with us and giving us a good insight into sort of like, you know, what you would be looking for. And I'm sure it'll help so many social workers. Any final words on social work that you would like to say?
I think just keep up the good work. I think always remember that it's a privilege to be invited into somebody's world, into someone's life.
Yeah.
And, you know, don't miss any opportunities to do good within that space.
That's a nice way to put it, actually. It is, because you're going into somebody's life, isn't it? And it's not every job is like that, to be fair. You guys really go in to really make that difference and really understand. So that's a lovely way to put it. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you for joining me. And I'm sure we'll be in touch very, very soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.